Welcome back to Power Play. Well, Canada's Minister of Public Security, Peter Van Loan, is going to join us in a minute. Let's just run over this diplomatic kerfuffle that happened when Janet Napolitano spoke yesterday in an interview. And let's look specifically now at what she said in that interview when she brought up the question of terrorists. And she said, to the extent that terrorists have come into our country, or suspected or known terrorists have entered our country across the border, it's been across the Canadian border. She then went on to say, she was questioned, she said, are you talking about the 9/11 perpetrators? To which Secretary Napolitano said, not just those, but others as well. Well, that prompted quite a storm. One of the comments came from Tom DeCino, who's the chairman of the Council of Chief Executives of Canada. He issued this statement late this afternoon. He said, I am a long-standing friend and ally of the United States, but sometimes failures in our two-way dialogue cause me to shake my head in sadness and dismay. And then, late this afternoon, the Department of Homeland Security issued this statement from the Secretary. It says, from Janet Napolitano, I know that the September 11th hijackers did not come through Canada to the United States. There are other instances, however, when suspected terrorists have attempted to enter our country from Canada to the United States. Well, that's a lot to chew on. A little hill-to-hill segment now. In Ottawa, Colin Robertson of the Norman Patterson School of International Study, and from Washington, Scotty Greenwood of the Canada-U.S. Business Council. Welcome to you both. Scotty, let me start with you. Janet Napolitano, who I know that you know, is a friend of yours, has set off quite a political firestorm in this country. How could she possibly, in the first instance, have repeated the urban myth about the 9/11 terrorists coming from Canada?
Well, thanks, Tom. Thanks for having me. And you're right, I have an awful lot of respect for Secretary Napolitano, and I honestly think that there is a silver lining in all this, which is a chance to debunk a myth that still exists in the United States about the terrorists. But to answer your question, how could this happen? The truth is she misspoke. She almost immediately corrected it. And the way the question was asked, with all due respect to the journalist who asked the question assumed the answer. So she shouldn't have made the mistake. But I'm a little more upset about the coverage and the way the media is interpreting her first few weeks in office, actually, and trying to extrapolate what that means for Canada than I am, with what she actually said, because she immediately corrected it. And of course she knows what the facts are. What's interesting to me also, though, Tom, is that, Canadians would be offended that anyone would acknowledge that there are terrorist threats from throughout North America and throughout the free world, including the United States and including in Canada. So that shouldn't come as a shock to somebody and to anyone. And people should think about the job she has. So.
Well, let me just throw this over for a Canadian view now. Colin Robertson, you're a long-time observer of this. You worked in Washington for a long time. Trying, when you were down there, I know because I saw you trying to debunk this myth about the 9/11 terrorists. And here you have somebody at the highest levels never saying it. Nevertheless, she corrected it. But pick up on Scotty's point. I mean, are people like me, Tom DeCino and others, making too much of this?
No, I think that, but we've got to realize this is yet another indication that there may have been a change of administration, but there's been no change in the American attitude towards what they perceive as national security. And it's incumbent on us to get down there and tell, as Scotty says, tell our story. We just had Commissioner Elliott on. I remember talking with one of the co-chairs of the 9/11 Commission, Lee Hamilton, respected congressman, and also did the Iraq Board. He said to me, what we should be doing, we should be down there constantly. He referred to what the Mexicans did in the mid-'90s. He said, you should get your commissioner of the RCMP, you should get your CSIS director, Jim Judd, down to Washington and tell the story up on Capitol Hill to the Congress. We have a challenge, obviously, with Janet Napolitano. She's a very smart woman. I met her when I was Consul General in Los Angeles. Used to see her when she was Governor of Arizona. She gets it. But she's surrounded. She's working in an enforcement department right now, and what you're seeing is we've got to get in there to tell our story. There's an opportunity right now, I think, to go in there and say, hey, look, we've got some things we'd like to do. We'd like to push the border beyond the border. We've got some pilots we'd like to do, for example, at Fort Erie and Buffalo, where we had the Deputy Secretary, as you know, Tom, up last week, talking about what can we do to partner. I'd use this as an opportunity to say, look, we're collaborating. We're doing all the things you want on enforcement, on intelligence. but we've got to improve that border.
But let me jump in on both of you, and let me first throw it to Scotty and then back to Colin. Shouldn't we be concerned, though, Scotty, as a country, that the policies that are being developed for their northern border, our southern border, are being developed in this depth of ignorance about 9/11? I mean, let's not worry for a second what she was saying about future terrorists and other terrorists that she says she can't discuss that have been coming in from Canada and going to the United States. But when policy is being developed on the basis of a myth, shouldn't that be a concern to our country?
Well, Tom, it's really important to debunk the myth, I agree, but I have to tell you that, to say that it's not possible, that it's not conceivable that terrorists could come from Canada is to deny reality. They could, unfortunately, come from Canada. We hope they don't. In the case of 9/11, they came in through JFK Airport. So I really think it would behoove Canadians to emphasize the real intelligence collaboration and the kind of defense relationship that our countries have had for years and years. Because as your
fair enough, Scotty, but let me just jump in here for a second.
Sure.
Nevertheless, the person at the top of the pyramid who's making policy in terms of our border is operating under this myth. I mean,
she's not, Tom. That's really unfair. Tom, that's really unfair for you to say she's operating under a myth. She was in an interview, she misspoke, she corrected herself. It's actually a great opportunity for Canada to make it clear to everybody that this myth is not true. So she is really trying her best, and it's a human making an error. But for Canadians not to want her to talk about threats is like talking to a chef and saying, "Chef, we want to talk to you about your meal, but don't talk about the ingredients." Think about what her job is.
Fair enough. Colin, let me throw that over to you. I mean, Scotty makes some good points there, but take it up.
Tom, I'd say she reflects an attitude I found and still find amongst the American elite, and sure, let's get mad, but let's be smart about it. Let's go in there now. As Scotty says, we've got an opportunity, but we have to take that opportunity to get out and constantly make our case. And we have to be aggressive and active about it, because unfortunately Americans' perception of a border becomes their southern border, where enforcement is a real issue, and that myth that we've just seen illustrated once again from most senior levels is something we've got to deal with. It's the reality, but we've got to get out there.
Colin Robertson,
make the
Scotty
Canadian
Greenwood.
case.
Thank you both very much for being here. Good discussion, by the way, spirited one. I appreciate it. Thanks very much.